The shout came first, sharp, guttural, laced with contempt. Hands where I can see them. The morning calm of Brookhaven Estates shattered like glass. Birds scattered from manicured hedges as the heavy stomp of boots echoed down the sun-soaked street. Officer Derek Sullivan moved fast, hand on his holster, his radio crackling against his shoulder. The man he was yelling at didn't move right away. He stood near a black BMW 7 Series parked in a pristine driveway, his navy suit perfectly pressed, his briefcase resting on the hood beside a paper coffee cup. His name was Terrence Washington, and he had just pulled into the home he'd owned for 3 years. But to Sullivan, he was already guilty. What do you think you're doing here? The officer's tone carried the smugness of absolute authority. Answer me. Terrence turned slowly, confusion flashing across his face. Officer, is there a problem? Problem? Sullivan barked. Yeah, there's a problem. You don't belong here. The words hit the air like gunfire. Windows opened. Curtains shifted. The perfect suburban silence gave way to the rustle of gossip. Across the street, Mrs. Carter, retired teacher and neighborhood watcher, stood on her porch in her pink robe. She lifted her phone and started recording. Her voice trembled with anger. Oh, no, not again. Sullivan advanced, his boots grinding on the white gravel. Put your hands on the car. For what reason? Terrence asked evenly, his calm tone both disarming and infuriating. Because I said so. You think you can just waltz into this neighborhood, park in someone's driveway, and pretend you live here? Terrence blinked. Pretend? Sullivan's hand shot forward, gripping Terrence's wrist and twisting it roughly. The sharp movement slammed him against the hood of the BMW. The metallic thud echoed through the street. A nearby dog barked. Someone gasped. Is this your car? Sullivan sneered. Huh? Or are you boosting it for someone else? Officer, please. Don't move. The cold bite of steel pressed against Terrence's back. Sullivan's handcuffs ready. His heart rate didn't spike. It steadied. His breathing was controlled. Decades of training taught him that panic only gave men like this power. He kept his voice calm. Officer Sullivan, right? How do you know my name? Sullivan demanded, instantly defensive. Your badge, Terrence replied quietly. It's right in front of me. That calm, deliberate tone made Sullivan uneasy. He doubled down, mistaking composure for defiance. Smart mouth. Let's see some ID. Terrence slowly reached into his inner jacket pocket. Deliberate, careful, every movement exaggerated, so there'd be no misunderstanding. He pulled out a leather wallet and handed it over. Sullivan flipped through it, like he was searching for proof of a lie. Terrence Washington? He read mockingly. What kind of made-up name is that? That's my name, Terrence said softly. Sullivan yanked out a platinum credit card, embossed with Federal Credit Union. Government issued, huh? Where'd you steal this from? I didn't steal anything. You think I'm an idiot? Sullivan hissed. What's this, fake ID too? He waved the wallet toward the growing crowd. Phones were out now. The live stream had begun. Mrs. Carter's voice could be heard narrating. This man lives here. I've seen him every morning for 3 years. This is disgusting. Her live stream viewer count climbed from 53 to 600 in under a minute. Terrence's eyes drifted to the small screen of his smartwatch. 9:47 a.m. His thumb brushed the digital bezel once. A tiny notification pulsed in the corner. He dismissed it with a faint smile. Sullivan misread it as mockery. What's so funny, boy? Terrence met his gaze. I just know how this ends. Sullivan slammed him harder against the car. You'll find out soon enough. The sound drew more spectators. The Hendersons, the Wilson twins, Karen Mitchell, head of the Homeowners Association, all emerged, drawn by noise and curiosity. Karen crossed her arms, her voice sharp. Officer, we've had several break-ins lately. Better safe than sorry. See. Sullivan gestured toward her. Neighborhood agrees with me. Terrence turned his head slightly, still pressed against the hood. Karen, I've waved to you every morning for 3 years. Her jaw tightened. Then I must not have noticed. You noticed, Terrence said quietly. You just never looked. The comment landed like a slap. The crowd murmured. Mrs. Carter's camera panned between them. The live stream chat exploded. This is insane. Call a lawyer. Typical Brookhaven. He looks suspicious, though. That's his house. You can see the name on the mailbox. Sullivan's radio crackled. Unit 47, requesting backup on Maple Drive. Copy that. A voice responded. Unit 23, en route. More sirens. More tension. Terrence's phone buzzed in his pocket. He saw the caller ID, Director Jensen, FBI. He ignored it. Not yet. He glanced again at his watch. 9:50 a.m. Sullivan pushed harder. You resisting? No. Just waiting. For what? You'll see. Sullivan's jaw twitched. You threatening me? I'm just asking you to remember your badge number. Sullivan froze mid-motion. What did you say? Badge number 4471. Terrence repeated. I'd like you to remember it. Something in the way he said it, deliberate, commanding, made even the neighbors pause. The street felt eerily quiet except for the faint hum of distant sirens and Mrs. Carter whispering, "Oh, my God." The second police cruiser rolled up. Officer Janet Mills stepped out, scanning the scene. What's going on here? Suspicious individual, Sullivan barked. Claims he lives here. Mills eyed Terrence's tailored suit and Italian leather shoes. Then the colonial mansion behind him. Something didn't fit, but she followed protocol. Sir, do you have any proof of residence? Terrence nodded toward his keys on the BMW's hood. Those open that door, that car, and that mailbox. Sullivan snatched them up. Could have copied them. Could have stolen the car. Or maybe, Terrence said, his voice still calm, I just live here. Mrs. Carter shouted across the street. He does live here. Check the mailbox. His name's printed right there. Ma'am, please step back, Mills ordered. We're conducting an investigation. Investigation into what? She snapped back. Standing in your own driveway? The live stream hit 3,000 viewers. Local comments flooded in. Hashtag Justice for Terrence. Hashtag Brookhaven Bias. Hashtag Blacktails Trending. Sullivan's patience cracked. That's it, he growled. Turn around. You're coming downtown. He pulled Terrence's wrist behind his back. The handcuffs clicked into place. Cold, tight final. Terrence didn't resist. He only looked up at the gathering crowd, and then at Mrs. Carter's phone. Keep recording, he said quietly. Mrs. Carter's voice trembled. I won't stop. The metal glinted in the sunlight. Sweat gathered at Sullivan's temple. Terrence's calm unnerved him. The more composed Terrence became, the angrier Sullivan grew. 9:56 a.m. 2 minutes until the call. Sullivan shoved him toward the patrol car. You have a right to remain silent, he began, voice dripping with satisfaction. Terrence interrupted softly. Officer Sullivan. What? Every second of this will matter. What's that supposed to mean? Just wait. By the time the third patrol car arrived, the viewer count had surged to 8,000. 2 news vans were already en route. And Terrence Washington, handcuffed, humiliated, and calm as glass, stood on his own driveway, watching the second hand of his Omega Seamaster count down to the moment everything would change. 9:58 a.m. 2 minutes to impact. Fade out. If you're enjoying this story, please subscribe to support the channel. The second patrol car siren died with a hollow echo, but the tension didn't. It lingered in the air, electric, acidic, impossible to breathe. Terrence Washington stood cuffed beside his BMW, wrist bound behind his back, shirt collar wrinkled where Officer Derek Sullivan had grabbed him. Sweat trickled down his temple, but not from fear. It was the heat of humiliation, the sting of being reduced, again, to a suspect in his own skin. The crowd had tripled. People spilled out of their immaculate homes like moths drawn to scandal. Brookhaven's calm facade, white fences, magnolia trees, perfect lawns, now serve as a stage for a racial reckoning. Mrs. Carter's live-stream camera trembled in her hands, but she held it steady. They're arresting him. He's lived here for years, she whispered to her phone. This is wrong. I've seen him walk his dog every morning. Her viewer count jumped. 3,000, 5,000, 9,200. The comments blurred. Typical. Where's his lawyer? This can't be real. He's so calm, that's terrifying. Why, she's still filming. She's brave. Across the street, Karen Mitchell, the HOA coordinator, paced with her arms crossed. She spoke loud enough for the cameras. Officers, we had a lot of crime lately. Don't let this turn into a circus. He's not supposed to be here. Karen, Mrs. Carter snapped, he lives here. Do you have proof? Karen fired back. His mailbox says his name. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Officer Janet Mills tried to interject. Let's keep everyone calm. But Sullivan wasn't listening. His eyes burned with the kind of authority that feeds on defiance. Let's get him downtown, he muttered. Sort this out there. Terrence inhaled slowly, eyes fixed on the street ahead. Officer Sullivan, he said softly, if I were you, I'd wait. Wait for what? Just wait. Sullivan shoved him toward the car. Get in. He opened the back door with a click that sounded too much like finality. 9:57 a.m. A boy's voice broke through the murmuring crowd. Mom, why are they arresting him? A woman whispered back. Because they think he doesn't belong. It hit Terrence like a physical blow. That was a real story. Not the cuffs, not the crowd, but the child watching his first lesson in prejudice. He turned his head toward the boy and gave a faint smile. The mother looked away, ashamed. Mills hesitated, lowering her radio. Sullivan, maybe we should check. Not your call, he snapped. He's obstructing. I didn't obstruct anything, Terrence replied evenly. You asked for ID, I gave it. You asked for keys, I handed them over. You asked for cooperation, you got it. Then stop talking. I will. After I say this, you're making a mistake that's bigger than me. Sullivan leaned close, the edge of his jaw tightening. You think your big words scare me? No, Terrence said. I think they'll haunt you. The camera caught the exchange perfectly. Mrs. Carter zoomed in, whispering, He's not even angry. He's calm. That's the scariest part. The live stream hit 12,000 viewers. Local reporters were already en route. Their scanners lit up with chatter. Possible racial profiling incident, Brookhaven Estates. Social media trending. #Justice for Terrence. Inside one of the nearby homes, a teenager clipped a wireless mic to his hoodie and went live on his own feed. We're here at Maple Drive in Brookhaven, where police have detained a man they say doesn't belong. But neighbors claim he's lived here for years. This could get bad. Screens lit up across the city, across the country. The moment wasn't just happening in a neighborhood anymore. It was happening everywhere. 9:58 a.m. Terrence's phone buzzed again in Sullivan's pocket, loud enough for the cameras to catch it. The caller ID flashed. Director Jensen, FBI. Sullivan scowled. Who the hell is calling you? Someone you should probably talk to, Terrence said. Sullivan silenced the call. Nice try. Mills frowned. Did that say FBI? Spam call, Sullivan grunted, dismissing it. They spoof numbers now. Terrence tilted his head. You sure about that? Sullivan turned, irritated. What's that supposed to mean? I'm saying, Terrence replied evenly, you've got 60 seconds to decide whether you want to be on the right side of history or the wrong side of a very public investigation. Sullivan barked out a harsh laugh. Investigation? Into what? Bias, Terrence said simply. The word hung in the air like smoke. The tension cracked into chaos when a third cruiser screeched to a stop. Sergeant Rodriguez stepped out, older, heavier, eyes sharp with experience. He scanned the scene in one glance. Handcuffed black man, 2 officers, cameras, crowd. He'd seen this movie before. It never ended well. What do we have here? He asked. Suspicious individual, Sullivan said quickly. Claims he lives in the Morrison house. Rodriguez looked at the home. 3-car garage, perfect hedges, flag swaying gently from the porch. He looked back at Terrence. Something didn't fit. The man's calm wasn't the arrogance of a criminal. It was the patience of someone who'd already played this game before. Any ID? Rodriguez asked. Fake, Sullivan replied. Rodriguez examined the wallet himself. The Federal Credit Union card gleamed. He frowned. You sure about that? Probably stolen, Sullivan muttered. These guys, Mrs. Carter repeated, loud enough for the mics. Say that again, officer. Sullivan ignored her. Rodriguez wasn't so lucky. Her camera caught his expression. Uncertainty, discomfort, regret. Sir, Rodriguez said carefully to Terrence, can you prove you live here? Terrence nodded toward the front porch. The keypad's fingerprint locked. Only my hand opens it. Try. Sullivan snorted. You think I'm walking you to the door? Rodriguez hesitated. Maybe we should verify. It'll clear this up fast. Or maybe, Sullivan growled, you want to start believing every liar we meet in a suit. Derek, Mills murmured, take it down a notch. Don't tell me how to do my job. The argument erupted in front of the crowd. Two officers squabbling while the man they'd arrested simply watched. Mrs. Carter's stream hit 18,000 live viewers. 9:59 a.m. Terrence spoke, softly but with precision. Officer Sullivan, you keep saying you protect this community. So tell me, when you look at me, what do you see? Sullivan sneered. A suspect. Not a homeowner, not a professional, just a suspect. That's right. Terrence nodded. Then you've just defined the problem. Mills exhaled shakily. Rodriguez rubbed his temple. The crowd was deadly quiet. Even Karen looked uneasy. Then the sound of engines. Low, steady, powerful. Not police cars. Something heavier. 3 black SUVs turned the corner, sunlight glinting off federal plates. Mrs. Carter gasped. Oh, my Lord. Sullivan turned, confused. Who called backup? Rodriguez stared, realization dawning too late. Those aren't. He stopped mid-sentence as the SUVs pulled up in perfect formation. The lead door opened. Terrence's calm finally broke into a small, knowing smile. Right on time, he murmured. The man who'd been humiliated in front of the entire neighborhood straightened his back, cuffs still on, and looked at Sullivan with the quiet confidence of someone who knew exactly what was about to happen. You should have waited, he said softly. I told you. The live stream hit 22,000 viewers. The first federal agent stepped out. Black suit, mirrored shades, earpiece glinting in the sun. Mrs. Carter's voice quivered as she whispered to her camera. Those are FBI vehicles. Comments exploded. No way. Plot twist of the century. He's FBI? Officer's career equals over. Sullivan's face drained of color. He reached for his radio, but his hands trembled. Mills looked at him, wide-eyed. Derek, what did we just do? Terrence lifted his head, the faintest edge of triumph in his tone. You profiled the wrong man. 10 a.m. The call was answered not by Terrence, but by the entire country watching. The SUV's doors slammed shut. Federal agents fanned out. The next act had already begun. For a few heartbeats, nobody moved. Engines idled. Sunlight flared off black metal. 3 federal SUVs sat like sentinels at the end of Maple Drive, their tinted windows reflecting the crowd's stunned faces. The quiet was eerie, like the pause before an earthquake. Officer Derek Sullivan swallowed hard, his arrogance curdling into uncertainty. What the hell? He muttered. The neighborhood's gossipers had fallen completely silent, the kind of silence that feels sacred and dangerous at once. From the lead vehicle, a tall black woman stepped out, all authority, all composure. Her tailored gray suit caught the morning light, and when she adjusted her earpiece, the insignia flashed unmistakably. Federal Bureau of Investigation. The crowd gasped as she walked toward them with the unhurried calm of someone who owned every second of the moment. Terrence lifted his chin, wrist still cupped behind his back, and spoke under his breath. Right on time. Who are they? Mills asked, her voice barely a whisper. Sullivan's radio crackled uselessly. Dispatch! We got unidentified. Static swallowed the rest. Federal frequencies were jamming the local signal. Rodriguez's hand went to his holster, a reflex. Then he caught himself. Stand down. Everyone stand down. The woman stopped a few feet away from Sullivan and the handcuffed man, He'd humiliated. "Officer Sullivan," she said, her voice cutting clean through the air. "I believe you have someone in mind." Sullivan blinked. "Yours?" "Yes." Her tone sharpened. "Assistant Director Terrence Washington, FBI Civil Rights Division." The words hit the crowd like a detonation. Gasps rippled down the street. Phones shook. Mrs. Carter nearly dropped hers, whispering, "Oh my God, he's FBI." The live stream counter jumped. 23,000, 35,000, 41,000 viewers. Hashtag Justice for Terrence trended in all caps. Sullivan tried to recover his footing. "Wait a minute, this guy?" He gestured at Terrence, voice cracking. "You're telling me he's FBI?" The woman stepped forward, producing her credentials in one swift, deliberate motion. The gold emblem glinted in the sunlight. "Director Sarah Jensen, Federal Bureau of Investigation. You're detaining one of my senior officers, and you're doing it on live stream." Mills went pale. Oh no." Rodriguez closed his eyes, whispering, "We're screwed." Sullivan's laugh came out brittle, forced. "You expect me to believe this? He's dressed like some lawyer, standing in a driveway." "His driveway," Jensen interrupted. Her voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. The precision of it was lethal. "He owns this property. He pays $47,000 a year in taxes. He's lived here since 2022. The cameras caught every word. The color drained from Sullivan's face. Look, ma'am, there's been a misunderstanding." "Yes," Jensen said coldly, "and it's about to become a federal one." Behind her, the other agents fanned out. 6 men and women in dark suits, moving like chess pieces across the suburban landscape. One collected statements. Another filmed the entire scene. The third approached Terrence with bolt cutters, snapping the cuffs open with metallic click that echoed like judgment. Terrence flexed his wrists, smoothing the creases in his suit jacket with quiet dignity. "Thank you," he murmured to the agent, then turned toward Sullivan. "I told you to remember your badge number." Sullivan's lips moved soundlessly. The cameras zoomed in, catching every flicker of panic in his eyes. The neighbors were transfixed. Even Karen Mitchell, the self-appointed HOA guardian, looked ready to sink through the sidewalk. She whispered, He really works at the FBI?" Mrs. Carter didn't lower her phone. "Yes, and you all just watched a hate crime in 4K. Sullivan's hand trembled as he reached for his belt radio again. "Dispatch, this is Unit 47I. "Officer," Jensen said sharply. He froze. "Your radio's been overridden. You'll speak when I permit you to." Her words were surgical, not shouted, but infused with the calm dominance of a veteran interrogator. "Do you know how many people are watching this right now?" she asked. Sullivan didn't answer. 45,000, she continued. 45,000 Americans witnessing a live example of racial profiling and unlawful detention, and all of it traceable to your badge number. Sullivan opened his mouth, but nothing came out. Jensen's expression didn't change. "Badge number 4471, correct?" He nodded weakly. "Good. The record will reflect that." The scene now looked like something out of a movie. Federal agents in a line, police officers frozen mid-defense, the crowd holding their breath, and the man who'd been humiliated standing calmly among them. The quiet center of a storm he had seen coming all along. Mrs. Carter's voice trembled with awe. He set them up without even saying a word. But she was wrong. He hadn't set them up. They'd set up themselves. Jensen turned toward the nearest camera, her voice steady, broadcast to thousands. For those watching live, this incident illustrates what happens when implicit bias meets authority unchecked. Officer Sullivan and his colleagues detained a federal agent without cause, on his own property, based solely on his race. The crowd buzzed in disbelief. Reporters were already arriving, mics raised, drones hovering. Jensen ignored them, focusing on Sullivan like a laser. "Tell me, officer, did you run his plates before you detained him?" Sullivan stammered. No, ma'am, he looked suspicious." "Looked suspicious?" Jensen repeated. "Define that for me." The question cut through the heat like ice. Sullivan blinked, lost. He was standing next to an expensive car in this neighborhood. And his skin color didn't influence your judgment at all? No, of course not. Of course not, Jensen said quietly. That's why he's handcuffed in his own driveway. Rodriguez stepped forward, his voice thick with remorse. Director Jensen, please, we didn't know. Exactly, she said. You didn't know, because you didn't ask. She turned to Terrence, who had been silent this whole time. Agent Washington, status report. Terrence nodded once. All trace of humiliation gone. In its place stood command. Operation Mirror. Phase 2 confirmed. Local law enforcement response documented. Civil rights protocols violated on all counts. Sullivan blinked. Operation what? Terrence faced him fully for the first time. Operation Mirror, he said. A federal study on systemic bias in law enforcement. Brookhaven PD was one of our target departments. You mean this was a setup? Sullivan gasped. Terrence shook his head. No, officer. I moved into this neighborhood and stood in my own driveway. You created the setup. All I did was give you a mirror. The words hit harder than any arrest could. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. The live stream counter hit 50,000. Mrs. Carter's phone buzzed from a flood of comments. This is history. He's an FBI agent. What a twist. That cop's career is done. Hashtag Operation Mirror is trending. Director Jensen addressed the crowd. Ladies and gentlemen, what you've witnessed today isn't just one officer's mistake. It's a reflection of a nationwide issue we've been documenting for 18 months. Every assumption, every hesitation, every bias, captured live. Sullivan looked like he might collapse. Ma'am, I was just doing my job. No, Jensen said softly. You were doing your habit, and now it's evidence. Rodriguez's voice broke the silence. Director, with your permission, we'll release Agent Washington immediately, and... You'll do nothing until instructed, Jensen replied. Then to the agents, secure the perimeter. Contact DOJ Media Relations. Full documentation, upload. Within seconds, federal agents move with frightening efficiency. Drones overhead. Cameras capturing every angle. Neighbors signing witness statements. The sound of a single car engine starting broke the stillness. Karen Mitchell's SUV. She tried to slip away quietly. Ms. Mitchell, Jensen called without turning her head. Stay where you are. You'll be giving a statement, too. Karen froze. Terrence stepped forward, eyes calm, voice low but resonant. You wanted to take me downtown, Officer Sullivan. Turns out, the entire country just came to you. Mrs. Carter lowered her phone for the first time, tears welling in her eyes. You just changed everything, she whispered. Terrence smiled faintly. No, Mrs. Carter. We just showed everything. Fade out. The street was no longer a neighborhood. It was a stage. Every drone, every camera, every trembling phone pointed toward Maple Drive, where power itself was being redefined. The black SUVs remained parked like silent judges. Their engines were off, but the authority they radiated filled the air. The officers from Brookhaven PD stood frozen. Uniforms that once commanded respect now looked like costumes stripped of meaning. Director Sarah Jensen stood at the center of it all, tablet in hand, posture unyielding. To her left, Agent Terrence Washington, the man who'd been humiliated an hour earlier, now stood beside her, suit immaculate, gaze steady, voice quiet but carrying weight that silenced the world. To her right, Officer Derek Sullivan, hands clasped behind his back, face drained of color, eyes darting between the cameras and the woman who held his career in her hands. Mrs. Carter's live stream had crossed 68,000 viewers and climbing fast. National news outlets were cutting in live. Anchors' voices filled televisions across America. Breaking news out of Brookhaven Estates. Federal agents have arrived on scene, an alleged racial profiling incident involving a senior FBI official. The headlines wrote themselves. Jensen began to speak, crisp, surgical, the way only a federal investigator can. Officer Sullivan, she said, reading from her tablet, 12 years of service. 17 civilian complaints filed against you in the past 24 months. 8 of them sustained, all involving the same behavioral pattern: bias toward people of color. Sullivan's throat worked. Director Jensen, with respect. Don't, she cut in, eyes like ice. You don't get to say with respect after handcuffing a federal agent on his own property. Rodriguez and Mills exchanged glances. Both looked gutted, like soldiers watching a ship sink. This isn't just a mistake, Jensen continued. It's a textbook case of systemic profiling, the kind of data we've been compiling for years. Congratulations, Officer Sullivan. You just gave America a live demonstration. The cameras zoomed in on her face. She didn't flinch. Terrence finally spoke, his tone calm, but his words razor-sharp. 3 years ago, I bought this home. No incidents. No disturbances. No police calls. But in that time, I've been checked, questioned, and stopped by neighborhood patrols 11 times. He turned slightly, addressing the neighbors directly. 11 times for walking in my own neighborhood. The words rippled through the crowd like an electrical charge. Mrs. Carter wiped her eyes. Karen Mitchell, the self-appointed gatekeeper, looked down at the pavement, unable to meet anyone's gaze. Terrence continued, I've spent 23 years in federal service investigating bias patterns across the country. What happened here today wasn't unique. It was predictable. He let that hang in the air. The silence that followed wasn't comfortable. It was truth settling in. Jensen lifted her tablet again. Effective immediately, she announced. Brookhaven Police Department is under federal oversight pending full investigation under Title VI and Section 14141 of the Civil Rights Act. Gasps erupted. Mills looked like she'd been punched. Rodriguez whispered, Oh, God. Jensen didn't pause. All officers involved will be placed on administrative suspension pending civil rights review. Federal monitors will be stationed at this precinct within 48 hours. Sullivan's lips parted. You can't do that. I can, Jensen replied. And I just did. Her agents handed him a sealed envelope. The embossed lettering on top read, Federal Order Suspension. He took it with trembling hands. The cameras caught the moment. The exact second arrogance turned into accountability. Mrs. Carter's live stream comments poured in. This is justice in real time. FBI doesn't play. Brookhaven just made history. Look at his face. He knows it's over. But Terrence wasn't gloating. His tone was steady, his composure unbroken. I didn't move here for revenge, he said quietly. I moved here to see if the system we built could face its own reflection. And now it has. Director Jensen turned to her agents. Activate the command unit. From one of the SUVs, a side panel slid open, revealing an entire mobile operations center, glowing screens, data feeds, and digital evidence already uploading to federal servers. The scene looked like a sci-fi courtroom unfolding on a suburban street. Neighbors gawked as federal techs set up tripods and scanners, documenting everything from badge numbers to body camera footage. Director, one of the agents called out, body camera covered, timestamp matches live stream. Jensen nodded. Upload it. A nearby screen flickered to life, playing back the footage. Sullivan's voice, every slur, every threat, every moment he violated procedure. The crowd fell silent again. Hearing it was worse than seeing it. Rodriguez stepped forward, voice heavy. Director Jensen, I take full responsibility. I should have intervened sooner. You should have, she agreed. But I'll note your admission in the record. Mills spoke next, voice shaking. He told me to stand down. I didn't know. You didn't ask, Jensen said flatly. That's the problem. You saw the uniform, not the man. Karen Mitchell finally found her voice, stammering from the curb. Director Jensen, I was just trying to keep the neighborhood safe. Safe from what, Ms. Mitchell? Jensen asked, turning slowly toward her. A homeowner? A taxpayer? Or the image in your head of who doesn't belong here? Karen froze. Cameras pivoted toward her. The judgment of millions weighed heavier than any fine. Mrs. Carter whispered to her phone, This is the reckoning. This is the moment everything changes. The live stream hit 82,000 viewers. Chief Morrison, the head of Brookhaven PD, arrived moments later, his unmarked car screeching to a stop tie askew, face ashen. Director Jensen, he began out of breath. I was informed. You were, she said. Your department signed a cooperation agreement with the DOJ 6 weeks ago. What? Sullivan blurted. You knew? Morrison's silence was answer enough. He'd known. The department had volunteered to participate in federal bias monitoring to avoid a lawsuit, and today's incident had triggered the program's public release. Sullivan stumbled backward, realization dawning. You set me up. Jensen's voice was calm, almost merciful. No, Officer Sullivan. You set yourself up. We just didn't stop you. A drone camera panned high above, capturing the full tableau. Federal agents documenting evidence, reporters broadcasting live, residents watching in stunned silence, and Terrence Washington standing motionless beside his BMW, no longer the accused, but the accuser. Jensen turned to the crowd, addressing the phones, the reporters, the live streams. This is what systemic reform looks like, she said. Not revenge, not outrage. Documentation, accountability, transformation. Her words reverberated like gospel. Terrence stepped forward beside her. We don't fight hate with hate, he said, his voice steady. We fight it with evidence. Every camera, every phone, every record. That's how we win. The applause started small, hesitant, then grew. Mrs. Carter was crying openly now, whispering into her live stream. He's not just fighting for himself. He's fighting for all of us. Jensen turned to her agents. Take the department into custody. Within minutes, the Brookhaven PD command structure was surrounded. Files seized. Devices logged. The entire institution that had mocked Terrence an hour earlier now stood powerless before him. Officer Sullivan slumped against his cruiser, head in his hands. Mills looked on, shaking, whispering prayers under her breath. Rodriguez stood at attention, ashamed but respectful, as Jensen nodded to him. You'll have a chance to make this right, she said, if you choose to learn. He nodded once. I will. Terrence looked at the street, the same one where he'd been thrown against his car, humiliated for existing. Now, every face was turned toward him, no longer in suspicion, but in respect. Even Karen Mitchell's pride dissolved into quiet regret. The live stream hit 100,000 viewers. History happening in real time. Brookhaven under federal control. Agent Washington, remember that name. Jensen faced the cameras one final time. Brookhaven PD will now operate under a consent decree. Federal oversight, mandatory bias training, public accountability reports. And Agent Washington, she gestured toward Terrence, will oversee the transition himself. Gasps, murmurs. Terrence's composure never broke. The man who'd been arrested for trespassing would now be their federal supervisor. Sullivan whispered, hollow. He's going to run the department? Jensen didn't look at him. No, Officer Sullivan. He's going to rebuild it. Fade to silence. The agents began to pack up, but the crowd remained rooted, awed. Mrs. Carter kept recording, voice thick with emotion. He never raised his voice, never fought back. He just waited, and the truth came to him. Terrence turned to her. Justice doesn't always knock. Sometimes it just shows up in black SUVs. She smiled through tears. And I got it all on camera. The sun was higher now. Harsh, brilliant, almost holy. The same light that had reflected off Sullivan's badge now glimmered on Terrence's FBI pin. The neighborhood wasn't the same anymore, and neither was the country watching. 6 months later, Brookhaven didn't look the same. The lawns were still perfect, the mailboxes still gleamed, and the morning air still smelled faintly of jasmine and coffee, but the silence had changed. It wasn't a silence of judgment anymore. It was a silence of reflection. A new sign hung outside the once imposing police precinct downtown, Brookhaven Federal Field Office, Civil Rights Compliance Unit. Below it, in smaller lettering, Director, Assistant Director Terrence Washington. The same man once thrown against the hood of his car now had his name etched in brass above the entrance. Every officer in the department now clocked in under the shadow of that plaque. The transformation had been swift, merciless, and necessary. Federal oversight wasn't just paperwork. It was a cultural earthquake. Officers underwent 40 hours of bias and empathy training each quarter. Every patrol car carried real-time recording devices linked directly to federal servers. Complaint response time dropped from 6 months to 6 days. More importantly, the culture of fear had begun to thaw. The same residents who once whispered from their porches now waved to the officers who walked the streets unarmed, unguarded, and accountable. Even Karen Mitchell, the former HOA enforcer, had resigned her post. She now led community volunteer programs. It wasn't redemption, not yet, but it was a start. Inside his office overlooking the town he had once been profiled in, Terrence Washington stood before the same window the old police chief once used to survey his kingdom. His reflection, calm, older, sharper, looked back at him in the glass. He had refused the limousine and the motorcade that came with his new title. He drove himself to work every morning. Same black BMW, same route, same neighborhood. But now, when he passed the residents of Maple Drive, people waved. Even Sullivan, the officer who'd cuffed him, nodded respectfully from across the street. And that was a story all its own. Officer Derek Sullivan had not been fired. Director Sarah Jensen had insisted on something more radical: rehabilitation through accountability. 6 months of unpaid suspension. 200 hours of community service in majority black neighborhoods. Mandatory participation in reform training. Standing face-to-face with the people his biases had once endangered. At first, he resisted. Then, something shifted. One humid afternoon in East Brookhaven, Sullivan sat outside a youth center after coaching basketball with kids who adored him. He looked exhausted, but lighter. When a reporter asked him what changed, his answer was simple. Agent Washington didn't ruin my life. He showed me what it looked like, and he gave me a chance to rebuild it. The footage went viral again, not as outrage, but as hope. Hashtag Second Chances trended for 2 days. Mrs. Carter, now known nationally as the Brookhaven grandmother, smiled when she saw the clip. "I told you he was special," she said during her interview with Channel 7. He wasn't just calm. He was teaching while they were arresting him. Across the country, people took notice. The Department of Justice renamed its reform initiative after the event that had shocked the world, the Washington Protocol. It became law, a federal standard for bias accountability. Every police department receiving federal funds now had to submit compliance reports, transparency audits, and bias response training records directly to the FBI. Terrence was summoned to testify before Congress. The footage of his calm testimony, the same man from the driveway, same tone, same grace, was replayed in classrooms, training centers, and universities nationwide. "We don't fix systems by destroying them," he told the Senate. "We fix them by documenting them." The camera doesn't lie, but it doesn't forgive either. It holds us all accountable. The chamber erupted in applause. His words would be quoted in civil rights textbooks for years to come. Meanwhile, back in Brookhaven, Mrs. Carter's original live stream had become a historic artifact, archived by the Library of Congress as a record of citizen documentation that triggered systemic reform. She still lived across the street, tending her roses. Sometimes she saw Terrence's wife, Dr. Kesha Washington, out for her morning jog, smiling, waving. Sometimes she saw Derek Sullivan picking up trash with neighborhood kids. And sometimes she simply sat on her porch, watching the light fall on Terrence's house, whispering. That's what courage looks like. But for Terrence, none of it felt like triumph. It felt like duty fulfilled. Every morning he walked past a spot where his humiliation had gone viral. He had refused to pave over the small scuff on the driveway from where his cuffed wrist had hit the hood. He left it as it was, a scar the sun still touched at dawn. One morning, as the mist burned off the asphalt, a young man in a crisp new FBI jacket approached him. "Sir," he said, voice full of awe, "I joined because of you. I saw what you did that day." Terrence smiled faintly. "Then make sure nobody ever has to do it again." The numbers told the story of transformation better than any headline could. Bias-related complaints down 84%. Use of force incidents down 79%. Community trust rating up 63%. Recruitment diversity up 52%. Brookhaven had become the test model for a national overhaul. The same place where a man had been arrested for trespassing in his own home was now the blueprint for federal police partnership and reform across America. News anchors call it the Brookhaven effect. But the story's heartbeat remained deeply personal. One evening, the sun melting gold over the rooftops, Terrence sat on his porch with Kesha, watching kids play basketball in the cul-de-sac, Sullivan's youth team. Their laughter filled the street where, half a year ago, there had been shouting and handcuffs. Kesha reached for his hand. "You still wear that watch." Terrence smiled, glancing at the Omega Seamaster that had ticked down to his moment of justice. "Reminds me that timing is everything. Do you ever get tired of being the man who changed everything?" He shook his head softly. "I didn't change everything. I just refused to stay quiet." Later that week, Blacktail Stories, the viral channel that had first amplified Mrs. Carter's footage, released a documentary titled The Day the Badge Bent. It opened with Terrence's voice over archival footage of a live stream. The world didn't see an FBI agent that morning. They saw a black man in a nice neighborhood. But by the time it was over, they saw the truth. That justice doesn't wear color. It wears patience. The documentary trended for 2 weeks, breaking 12 million views in 3 days. Schools, activists, and community leaders streamed it during Civil Rights Week. Even police academies began using it as a case study on de-escalation and implicit bias. In the closing moments of the documentary, Terrence spoke directly to the camera, his tone as calm and powerful as the morning he first faced Sullivan. "When you see injustice, don't just get angry. Get evidence. When you're disrespected, don't just fight back. Stand still long enough for the truth to catch up. Every phone is a witness. Every witness is power. We can't change history, but we can record it, and that changes everything." The screen faded to black with white text. Blacktail Stories, where real-life stories create real change. 6 months after the confrontation, Mrs. Carter was still recording. Not injustice this time, but progress. A community barbecue filled the street with laughter and music. Children ran past where the patrol cars had once lined the curb. Terrence, Sullivan, and Rodriguez stood side by side, flipping burgers, laughing, joking. When a reporter asked Terrence what this moment meant to him, he smiled thoughtfully and said, "It means the story didn't end in anger. It ended in accountability. And that's what justice looks like." The camera zoomed out, catching the setting sun washing the street in gold. Where humiliation once burned, healing had taken root. Fade to black. If you like this story, please subscribe to support this channel.